So this week's Required podcast is with Jack Copeland. I'm at the end of the day here. He's at the start of the day over in Orange County, LA. Really interesting. He had a very brief stint in recruitment, but has been in software sales, worked for some of the industry-leading companies. Talks about his startup, his journey, and his experience of going to the US. Really interesting guy. Obviously, clearly knows his stuff. Hope you enjoy. So welcome to the Required podcast. Today's guest is live from Orange County, California. We've got Jack Copeland, who's the co-founder and CEO of Staffing Future. Certainly not to be called Staffing Futures, definitely Staffing Future, non-plural. And as I've been told in the warm-up to this. So Jack, it'd be good if you introduce yourself. We've met obviously because you guys are partners to the network, but why don't you tell the listeners and the watchers who you are and what you do and how you got into this staffing business?
Yeah, awesome. No, thanks, Andy. Nice to be on the podcast. So yeah, I don't think it's, for me, being in staffing was a bit like being a Fulham fan. I didn't really have much choice. Sort of, I was born into it, I guess. So my mum and dad worked for a staffing company, and then founded a staffing company probably 35 years ago now, in oil and gas. And so I actually ended up quitting school after they stupidly paid for it. Not stupidly, I thank them for it, but paid for a very expensive private education that led to me quitting school at 16 and went and got a job at a staffing company, which I applied for in the newspaper of all things. And then, just ended up staying in the industry. Within a couple of years, moved into staffing technology to work for Kelly Robinson at Mex. That's where I met Dan McGuire with Broadbands, and decided that I thought staffing software or recruitment software was a lot more fun than cold calling for picking up placements. I would rather cold call to sell software, and that was really how it began. And then I won't give you the whole never-ending version, but ended up spending 10 years with Broadbands. They relocated me to the States. I worked out in Holland and opened up the Dutch office, and then did sort of 5 years of about 3 years of consulting with Herefish and other companies people might have heard of. A bit of work with Abster before eventually launching Staffing Future.
Amazing. That's pretty whistle-stop tour. So people working in agencies now, there is a future outside. They're not just, they can do other things but recruitment.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to be honest, we don't really know if I can do recruitment. So I'm one of those guys that's been talking about the industry and working in the industry on the technology side. But I think I was top resourcer at Mex Europe, but never really made it as a consultant, and ended up quitting after about a couple of months to go and work for Broadbands. So I think I've made 2 placements and they both dropped out. So yeah, definitely you can move into staffing tech, but I don't know if I can move into recruitment.
Good to hear about. Broadbands is such an interesting company in the sense it's a bit like S3. People leave them and go and found great businesses. So what was the secret of Broadbands? Why did they hire and retain such great people?
Really good question. And it's funny that you use that analogy because I use it out here a lot as well. And I also reference Allegis Group out here, which is kind of quite similar to S3, with tech systems and those guys in the US, where it just feels like so many people fell from that tree and started their own businesses. I think, honestly, the biggest thing about Broadbands was the culture. And that's probably one of the harder things, when obviously businesses get bought, that culture changes over time. But yeah, it was weird. Like, people joined and we were growing really quickly and no one ever really left. And Kelly and Dan did like a really, really good job of building the culture with that business. And then, to be honest with you, not to blow my own trumpet, but there was definitely a handful of, probably 10 people I can think of that were in early that definitely championed that culture and helped carry it out to the States, to Holland, to wherever else we opened up. And sort of kept it going, really, because obviously it's easy enough when there's 20 of you, but when there's 250 of you across lots of different locations, it takes more than just Kelly and Dan, the original leadership. So, but I think that was the bit behind it. I mean, everyone, it seems normal now for everyone to kind of work a bit remote and have flexible hours and stuff like that. But back then it wasn't so common, and somehow we just built like a willingness within the organization where everyone would just get stuff done and everyone would figure it out and everyone felt part of something. And to be honest with you, that's something that we're trying to do, a V2 of, I guess, at Staffing Future.
I was going to say, because, look at your CV, you don't do corporate, you don't do big. So, it's either start up or scale up. There's no, I can't see you turning up to a 5,000 man company in a suit.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's I think it's just the upside of having been in that culture. Because obviously, I think I mentioned at the beginning, I did a couple of years in recruitment, right? And I had, I was riding a 50cc Vespa to work at one point in a suit with wind and hail. And then the next year, I was traveling up from my parents' house in Isha. It was an hour and 20-minute journey, and it's freezing cold. And then you stood up on the train and you're sweating, and then you're freezing cold again. Then you're on the tube and hustling up to the office. And I think once eventually I was at Broadbean, and it was just like a slightly different attitude to the way that we approach work, which is of course the norm now. At that point, I was like, I love fast growing companies. Like that's what excites me. And so, for me, when Broadbean got bought by Career Builder, it was pretty hard. And I was probably like the first rat off the ship, for want of a better phrase. Like I saw the writing on the wall fairly quickly, and I was like, this isn't for me. In hindsight, I probably should have stuck around and rode the gravy train for a year, but is what it is,
Were you first at literally the earn out paid and you were gone, yeah?
So I didn't have any earn out. I had a lot of commission over the years, but I was not one of the founding fathers. So I think I was about the 7th member of staff and first or second full-time salesperson. But yeah, I mean, Career Builder, they wanted to keep me to help them build their technology side, and they paid very well. They were kind of famous for it, but there was just something about the company that just didn't. So I was going to say vibe with me, but that's the most California thing ever. But yeah, there was something that just I didn't hate them or anything, but I just couldn't really get into the ethos of the organization. And I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I left this part out, but I formed like a weird mobile application game that I raised some money from, and just was like 2 foot straight in the deep end. Let's go be an entrepreneur. And yeah, it was pretty hard. Didn't make a lot of money for a long time, and I was used to earning some good money over the years. Yeah. But I haven't worked for anyone since, so it's worked out that thus far at least.
Well, there's a lesson to anyone acquiring a business. Yeah, you want to keep people you time in when you do the deal. Yeah, not when they realise just how bad you are.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, they were fairly good to the team Career Builder. They didn't just get rid of people or anything. But I think the issue was they basically just decided that their sales team would sell it and my sales team would become sales engineers. And obviously I'd been recruiting great salespeople, so none of my team really wanted to be sales engineers. And so I think that was really the issue there, to be honest with you. But I think that would be the biggest lesson I would look back at Career Builder. And look, I mean, Career Builder, a very successful company. They bought, they've done well with Broadbean. It's grown a bit. I think I haven't been involved in that world for a while, but they've bought businesses like MZ that they managed to grow 1,000% and sell for huge amounts of money. But I think we were one of the first learning experiences for them. And I think the gap that they had was they were more media driven, and they bought Broadbean for the technology, but then weren't super interested in listening to the people that were the success behind it. And I'm not talking about myself there. I'm just talking about some of the rest of the team. It was very much kind of like, hey, we're going to buy this great piece of software and then we're going to do it our way. And bits of that worked and bits of it didn't,
I think the thing is, because I did come from a big corporate, some of the stuff that, you do as a corporate makes sense, but it doesn't make sense to the people on the ground, but it does make sense. So there's always 2 sides to that. But I think you're either a corporate person or you're not. So what I'm really interested in, though, because my business partner, Dalta and Charlotte, they're currently just moving people around the world. They're taking UK recruitment consultants, they're putting them out in the US, Dubai, Cayman Islands, Australia. It's like there has never been a better time to go and live somewhere else and be a recruiter. So how did you end up in the States?
So Kelly Robinson had opened up the US office as part of sort of Broadbean signing manpower. And he said, do you want to come out and do some training? So I came out and I did some training with the existing salespeople. And I really liked it. And he fired off an email and said, this is going well, can I keep him? And he got an email back going, yeah, why not? And then about 9 months later, after jumping through a million hoops, I got my visa and I was supposed to come out for 3 years. And my mum cried and said, no, you're going to stay, aren't you? And I said, no, Mum, I'll be back in 3 years. And it's been 10 years. So sorry, Mum, I guess.
Mum gets a great holiday, though. Outside of COVID, I imagine Mum gets great holidays. So.
Yeah, mum and dad have been out here a good 10, 15 times. So yeah, they've it's quite weird actually. They've like built because they come out, they're retired now. They come out for like 3 weeks at a time. They've actually made their own friends. They've got their own friends out here, which is weird.
So what's the biggest advice you could give to someone, going from because a lot of our audience, they're either businesses that have US businesses or they're aspirationally to have US businesses. What's the biggest advice you give to our members thinking about going to the States?
So it's a really good question. I've been asked that quite a lot over the years, and I hope it's not super out of date, just because obviously, when I did this, it was 10 years ago. And so now it's almost the other way around for me. There's a couple of intrinsic differences between the American market and the UK market. Like, for starters, the US market is just, and it seems obvious, but it's so much bigger, it's so much more spread out. So in bits of it, you see a lot more sophistication. I think arguably there's more sophistication when it comes to customer success, right? There's definitely a much more broken down recruitment process in terms of when I first came out. I was used to recruiters being 360 and they pick up their jobs and they work their jobs, and then you come out here and it's like, oh no, we have a salesperson and we have an account manager and we have a recruiter and we have a resourcer, and I'm like, wow, okay, there's 5 people in the system. I think, and I promise you, I'm not just saying this because it's my industry, but I think that the strongest ability that the UK recruitment market has to grow in the US is ability to train people and scale through training and development, and then also its understanding of technology and marketing. And I know those last two probably seem a little bit biased, but having been out here 10 years, we notice when we're in the UK market how much more sophisticated that part is. And I would say the US market is probably 5 or more years behind when it comes to the sophistication of its marketing and the sophistication of its technology. So those are 2 things that people can bring across. I think in the UK, it's that the trust thing is a little bit different. It takes longer to build trust with people, but then they are, they kind of don't give it to you at first. You have to earn it, but then there'll be a bit more longevity with it. In the US, it's very the other way around. People are quite quick to trust you, but it's very, very easy to lose. So there's certain personality dynamics that are a little bit different as well. I hope that answers your question.
No, 100%. I mean, the other big question I've got for you is, what made you think the world needed another staffing recruitment website company?
So it's a good question, right? And so my business partner had probably built 500 staffing websites or recruitment websites, right? I'd been in the industry 16 odd years and never built a website, never really thought about it. I'd sent him some leads back when he was Optimal Internet at Broadbean. And actually, it's really interesting because when I became an entrepreneur for the first time, I use that term loosely, but when I quit my job at Broadbean, I was like, I'm going to go and figure this out. I didn't think I was being arrogant at the time, or I didn't think I was being ego driven, but I sort of had all these ideas about what people needed and how it would fit. And I think everyone comes out with that concept of like, I've got good ideas, let's go make it happen, before they realize that ideas are semi-meaningless and really it's about execution. And when that failed and when it didn't really work, I went, okay, I can sell myself. What can I actually be good at? And I was like, well, I have a really limited sphere of knowledge, right? But that knowledge is helpful. So I went out and I was like, I'm going to consult with people on staffing technology, and I'm going to help US staffing businesses figure out how to put their tech back together. Okay. And so I did that for 2 years. And so for 2 years, I was looking at all the emerging tech, all the stuff that I thought was cool. And it was all completely marketing driven, really. It was all about how do we acquire candidates? How do we convert them into leads? And realistically, within that, obviously, you got Bullhorn, that was the main source of truth. And then a couple of other ATSs that either went and built the entire ecosystem, or they went and followed a similar model to Bullhorn. And the gap that I saw, and sorry, it's turning into a full-blown sales pitch, but the gap that I saw was that there wasn't really a front end piece to that either the ATSs were providing in terms of like job search, candidate experience, candidate portal, or website, nor was there any providers that were out there. I think the example I use is I think Bullhorn has 12,000 customers. And then there's a couple of people in our industry that maybe have 1,500 or something that aren't just on Bullhorn, but there's no global supplier. Even there's a lot out there, there's no global supplier that even comes close to some of the big ATS companies. And yet everyone has a website and everyone needs candidates to apply to it. And so solidifying that point, stop rambling, but we saw how many marketing products, whether it was social, whether it was PPC, whether it was job boards, whether it was your Hearfishes, your Senses, whether it was chatbots, so much of what people were doing was relating back to, I bring the candidate, where do I send them? Yeah. And yet the websites were just templated digital marketing websites. And so we wanted to bring technology into that and integrate it.
So how long before Bullhorn acquires you after that sales pitch? Going around buying everyone else in the ecosystem. If Pete Linus is watching this or listening to this, you're available, yeah? And you solve a problem.
Oh man, I think we need to. Our ambition is to go and be the biggest provider out there before we would ever consider anything like that. There's so much room here in the US to grow. We only have about 200 brands and we have about 35 staff, and so I really would like to grow this business to a similar sort of size to where Broadbean got to, and be dominant in the UK and the US and maybe Australia. Bullhorn passed and Volcanic, I believe, back in the day anyway, is the rumor that I've heard. So I'm not sure they're in the market for websites, but who knows? But for now, we still see ourselves as a pretty early stage startup, and we want to grow the business. We want to grow in the UK an awful lot, and mainland Europe as well. Good excuse to come home and see mum and dad.
It's interesting you say about Volcanic. I mean, I think they were very much in that startup space, very agile, and again, perhaps that dynamic's changed now. They're a bit more corporate now. Access have bought them.
Yeah, I see a really obviously they're a big competitor of ours, and so it comes up. It's just part of day-to-day conversation that happens with prospective clients or existing clients or whatever. And the reality is that it sounds like a very similar story to Broadbean in many ways. It's just a big difference between being a smaller company with a fast-growing culture, and then that acquisition happening, and it just being some big change. So I think they've got a much more sort of corporate environment now. It's a good platform, it's a good product, and actually there's you say what we need another recruitment website provider. Actually, when you really look at it in terms of a technology-driven, software-driven platform, there's not many out there really. There's actually a real gap. There's a lot of great digital marketing companies where websites are 15-20% of what they do, but there's not really a lot of website platforms that are actually building proper nurturing technology and proper automation, proper matching to get candidates in. If you look at something like, my fiance's in the e-commerce industry with O'Neill, funnily enough, the surf company. But if you look at the way e-commerce is and the way that it just monitors user behavior, and it's all about, what did you put in your cart? Check it out, discount code, red shoes, blue shoes, how to clean your shoes. Just give me your email address, give me your IP address, give me something, give me a phone number. I will bring you back and you will buy when the time is right. Yeah, and we don't really do that.
I will find you.
Exactly. I will hunt you down and I will recruit you.
pretty much. No, I mean, it's interesting. I was working with a firm, and they were just about to renew their website, and they were with a non-recruitment provider, and we were chatting away, and I looked at their quote, and I'm like, okay, this isn't, this doesn't feel like a market quote. And also as well, the firm didn't understand recruitment. They didn't understand it's all about candidate acquisition. It's all about grabbing the interest. It's all about getting, being the difference in terms of getting that person on that candidate journey and hooked in. And I think what was really interesting to me is just how much the game's moved on. It used to be that you used to do this massive start from, what do we want to see? It'd be a big committee meeting, and you spend 6 figures on a website. The game's changed now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what you need is the software. There's 2 big things to what we do, and 2 big things that many of our competitors do as well, right? And you need to think about that are different to every other digital marketing company around the corner, right? And those are integrating with staffing specific technology and then building the technology into the website. So whether it's things like text alerts, email alerts, in browser alerts, the matching engines, stuff that is basically trying to nurture and convert that candidate. And people say, well, we have that, but you have that in the ATS, right? You need that before you get the candidate into the ATS. And then when they're in the ATS, you need to, whether it's via a chatbot or whatever, you're getting them in, you need to hand that off and go, okay, well, we're not going to duplicate with Force 24, with Herefish, with Scent. So that's kind of the journey that we're on our roadmap, and the sophistication that we're trying to bring is okay, how do we build that tech in place to convert it, but then also integrate with it. And the trouble, there's that piece, but then there's also the stuff that's been around for 10 years, which is like the right URL structure for your jobs, the right job search, the right keywords, the right filtering, and just local companies don't really understand that. So they design you a great website, and they'll arguably do a better job than a lot of people out there when it comes to content and basic SEO optimization and web vitals and some of those things. but then they're just missing the giant sort of obvious piece, which is jobs indexing, Google for jobs, searching for jobs, applying for jobs, all that kind of stuff.
Now, what was really interesting is I've seen one of your sales proposals, and actually the publicly available data that owners can find on their actual, how their current websites are performing. And then you almost go away and say, it perform this. It's a really interesting sales pitch, because you effectively, giving them a bit of free consultancy, saying, and we can help you with that, or there it is. It's a very interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, it is. And it's strange because I'm used to demoing a product, right? I spent 10 years showing people how to post jobs in Broadbean. And so, we have a whole login area where, of course, you can update your website and you can see things, you can run reports. And I very rarely even show that because it's just less relevant. People don't, they might want to look for 5 minutes if they're used to it. And fundamentally, we have a CMS on top of WordPress anyway, which a lot of people are familiar with. But yeah, we tend to pitch by showing a couple of slides that goes, okay, what's different between us and everyone else? Just because it's important to cover that. And then we dive into their existing website and we sort of pick it apart in a nice way, because there's a lot you can see in the source code. There's a lot you can see what pages are being indexed by Google and how they're being indexed. You can see the metadata. You can figure out how the search works. You can go through and look at, the HTML and see what schemas they've got in there and stuff like that. You can run publicly available reports like you mentioned on SEO engines, and so you can give them a real feel. And funny enough, what I don't do is show them lots of websites that we've built, because design is subjective, right? And we have to give our clients what we want. And so there's a handful that I absolutely love, and then everyone's got their favorites. But after a while, you're like, it's like, I don't know, it's like being in a retail store and just randomly holding up lots of different shirts and being like, look at this one, it's not super consultative. Yeah.
So I won't call and ask you to name your favourite. So I won't do that to you. But everyone can write in and ask Jack on the LinkedIn comments below if they want. I think for me, one of the exciting things about the industry is it's always changing. I had Giles from Robert Walters on last week, and we were just talking about how the job's similar, but actually how it's that many more moving parts, actually more complicated. What do you think is going to be a hot trend in the next year or two? What are we going to see? What's going to be different and new, or what will people be doing more of? What will people stop doing? What's going to be big trends?
So really good question. I think for sure, focusing more on the operational side of recruitment businesses, right? Increasingly, it kind of blows my mind when people don't have more people within the organization that are not finance, that are not recruitment, and are not sales, right? That they're working on the cogs in the system, they're working on that process, they're working on how do we just get more and more efficient and build the right process and the right marketing, the right training within it. So I think that will only increase. I think increasingly as the efficiency of just hiring a good recruiter or a good salesperson being like, just hit the phones really, really hard goes down, right? Especially with COVID and with the tech that's out there, people are starting to not see it quite as much as, okay, well, I could go and hire a support person within that business to evolve the longer term strategy. But instead, if I hire this, I know I follow this process. I hire 3 people. One of them works out to be great. One of them let's go. One of them maybe not. I'll turn this much profit. It's not as much of an exact science. It doesn't become as scalable when you want to go from 25 people to 100 people or to 500 people. So I think that will continue to expand as well. I think on the technology side, and look, once again, this sounds a little biased, but we're following and looking at the way that it works in other industries. As talent becomes harder and harder to acquire, everyone will tell you, we don't want to post jobs because we don't want just the candidates that are looking. We want passive candidates. So they maybe reach out to them on LinkedIn. But if you look at the way that the e-commerce industry or any other industry has gone, it used to be, you bought via Amazon, via eBay, via Etsy, whatever the platforms were. And that's more like your traditional job posting model. Now everything's going down more of a programmatic route. People are buying clicks, they're advertising direct on Instagram, they're bringing people into their micro experience, they're selling within their niche. And as the technology develops, right, to do a better job of that, eventually that will become the most profitable and the most efficient way. Like right now, you want to do Indeed quick apply because you just get more candidates that way. Arguably, the quality is better if you bring them into your own experience, but the needle keeps moving closer and closer for it becoming more cost effective if you do a proper job to bring people into your experience and remarket them. So I think focus on operation, focus on marketing, and the focus on the wider structure of the business will be the biggest change that we'll see.
I think the thing I'm most impressed with in that answer is the fact you didn't use the word niche. So you're still calling it niche, still keeping it London real. I said tube the other day, and I said Putin as well, and I was pretty mad at myself. Want to keep that down. So obviously doing really well in the US. We know of you in the UK as well. Is it different? You said that the UK is a bit more sophisticated. So is it easier to sell to a more sophisticated market, or is it more difficult to sell to a sophisticated market?
It's a good question. I think they have higher standards, which we're trying to really lean into, which is quite nice. And especially when it comes to design and things like that. So they tend to come a bit more organized, or perhaps organized is the wrong word. They want to be way more involved, right? Which I think we at the moment really appreciate and like. We briefly considered doing a campaign, which we're not going to do as a bit of a joke, sort of pager-esque, but to do a hashtag unhelpful design feedback, because, out here we get a lot of like, just make it pop, or I'll know it when I see it. But, we're really not just focused on design. We're about a lot more than that. So we chose not to do that. But we love the fact that in the UK, people are more involved and more engaged in their website. The challenging piece within that, some of that's good for us, right? It brings us forward as a business. It drives our design forward. But then it does obviously impact the delivery challenges as well, right? So that's something that's been interesting for us. What's strange is we haven't struggled to grow in the UK, and I think part of that's just the way that it's happened market wise. We're doing almost as much new business in the UK as we are in the US. Wow. But part of that's because I was in the UK recruitment market for 7 years. My business partner is South African, but he was there for 10 years and worked for JobSite, and then formed his own web development company for staffing. And then even our VP of software, Ian, who's just joined after 15 years at Broadbands, spent 8 years in the UK. It's quite weird, actually. He's originally from Vietnam. Bruce is originally from South Africa. I'm originally from London. We've all got British accents. We all live in California, so it's very confusing. But yeah, so we've managed to survive it thus far.
Fantastic, it's good to hear. Well, look, sounds like quite a journey so far. So, how big's it going to go, Jack?
I hope very big. I mean, at the moment, we've been doubling year on year. I always joke that sometimes it feels like no matter how many people we hire, we have more departments than we have people. But we're starting to really round that out now. This has been the last 6 months has been the point where I really feel like we've got the right structure. It's just the nature of what we do. For most of our clients, we're designing the website. So you need a full-time graphics design team. Then you need project management. Otherwise, nothing happens on time and gets very messy. Then you need someone to put designs into a website, but then you also need support. Then you need customer success, which is proactive sales and marketing, and then that's without innovation, which is our main focus, really. So there's just a lot of different people involved in the process, and then you've got UK and US, and then I've got people going, why aren't you in Australia yet? And I'm like, well, there's quite a few customers to go and acquire in the UK and the US first. So yeah, I would like to see us try and get 10 times the size that we are, and I think it's there for the taking. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. It's going to be an awful lot of hard work, but why not have the ambition? Why not try and take it there? The market's certainly big enough.
No, I think you're right, and I agree with you. I think my take is that recruitment has become more and more marketing, and the interesting thing about recruitment is both B2C and B2B, because you've got to attract your clients, you've got to attract your candidates, and you've got to have those different personas. So, your web journey has to, be both sides of the coin as well. And that's quite a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, it is. There's only so many ways to do it, right? When people think about it at a high level, it's sort of like 3 calls to action on the homepage. Are you going candidate first, client first, both the same, internal recruitment? But I think what people don't get is it's more sophisticated than that, throughout the rest of the site. I'll never forget, like I was 16 or 17 working for Cal, and some old school recruiter sat me down and said, you're selling to the only thing in the world that changes its mind and in terms of a candidate. And that stuck with me for years. And then the other day a lawyer said to me, everything is marketing, because I'd sent over our agreement, and it was the agreement of a startup, and I'd sent it to one of the top top 10 recruitment companies in the world. And I was suddenly looking at it, I was like, oh, it's got a couple of things on there that are just a bit untidy. And he was like, everything is marketing. And I think, you put those two things together and that's what it's about. It's not about, what's the basic user journey on your homepage. It's about building a level of sophistication for all of your candidates and all of your clients, because they are looking at you on the web and they are looking at you on social media, and you need to do everything that you can to get that initial lead. But then after that, you need to do everything you can to keep them answering your calls, keep them having your conversations, and eventually get them to take a job with your client or to offer a job to your candidate. It's not, just at the entry point. It's no different to how we buy in any other cycle of our life. And that's the big thing, is just to keep reassociating the way that we buy in other markets with the job that we do. And I think it's easy to forget that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think it's going to be really interesting to watch your journey. I mean, you've achieved so much so far, but how much further it can go. So as part of the Required network, I know you've been really good to a number of our members. And I think, what we've really liked is, you've done the consultative bit for them and given them reports. It's pretty good. So if people want to get hold of you, have Staffing Futures come and kick the tires on their website, or they're looking or thinking of getting new, how can they get hold of you, Jack?
So they can find us very easily on www.staffingfuture.com. We've actually just released a new website. It took us a while because we were so busy building everyone else's, but I really, really like that one, actually, funny enough.
That's your favourite one, yeah?
Well, maybe not. It's one of them for sure. And then they can also email me, jack@staffingfuture.com, connect with us on LinkedIn, all the usual channels for sure. And more than happy. Like, one of the things that we've always been focused on is it's not about just winning deals now. It's about building relationships over the long term, whether it leads to revenue or not. So if people have questions about staffing tech, staffing technology, any of that stuff, we'll always take the call. We're always happy to chat. And try and be as impartial as possible in making recommendations about anything that we or anyone else does.
Sounds great. So thanks so much for taking the time. I think it's pretty early there. It's getting a bit late here, so I'll let you go and get on with your day. But thanks so much for taking the time, and look forward to catching up soon. And next time you're in London, you can take me to a Fulham game or something.
Yeah, absolutely. We should be in the Premier League, and I'm home for a month in June, so I'm looking forward to meeting with clients, prospects, anyone who's about, maybe hitting up a couple of networking events if you guys have got anything going on for that month. And then I'm sure I'll be back at some point when the season starts. So I think actually today we could get promoted. So fingers crossed.
Good luck. Congratulations. Be watching out for it. All right. Cheers, Jack.
Thanks so much, Eddie. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.